Well, folks, today we have a bunch of news to bring to you regarding games coming to Nintendo Switch 2, and that is just how today is working out. Look, yeah, we have some sales data updates from Famitsu and stuff to go over from yesterday, along with some other little minor news stories in between, and I guess technically one new rumor, although I wouldn't really call it a rumor at this point since it is a rating, so I guess it kind of indicates something like Guardians of the Galaxy could be native on Switch 2 very soon. But more than that, we just have a lot of stuff. Level 5, as an example, had a presentation today. We didn't live react to it, so we're going to cover the news here. We have a bunch of stuff to go over for that. We have Mouse PI for Hire. We have some new trailers for that. The game comes out next week. We have some new stuff for Pragmata. We have a lost prototype of the very first game I've ever played in my life. So that's one reason why we're going to be talking about this. I'm going to briefly cover the news that we actually put in yesterday's video about Elden Ring. We have some updates on the former Nintendo employee and their criticism or concerns for the Zelda movie. More than that, we have some updates for Pokemon Champions, which we haven't really talked about since it came out, so I think it's good for us to revisit this. We have an update to NSO and some new games being added. And more than that, Nintendo actually did something cool yesterday. They gave us a teaser for Rhythm Heaven and a release date. So now that release date lines up with what Nate the Hate said. It's just another tip of the cap to the recent rumors from Nate the Hate. But until that Star Fox game is revealed this month, I know a lot of people are still kind of being a little skeptical, which I understand. Like, honestly, Nate the Hate's never laid out a roadmap like this in terms of just what he knows. So, look, just because one thing got checked off his roadmap doesn't mean that everything is. So, we'll talk about that when the time is right here. Before we dive in, though, I just want to remind you, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 right now. You can enter through the link down in the pinned comment or the description. This giveaway will still be going on here for a little while, at least through this month and maybe through the month of May. I have to sort some things out on when exactly I want to end this giveaway. I do want to end it before we get to the summer months, but we'll just have to wait and see how things work out on my end, because I'm trying to work out some logistics with some of our prior giveaways, and I'm not going to end this giveaway until the prior giveaways are taken care of. That being said, folks, I want to go ahead and just let you know that we're on a road to 162,000 subscribers. We're still about 50 subscribers away or so. We keep bouncing back and forth every day. We gain some, we lose some. Maybe today is the day that we decide to get past it. I don't know. It's up to you guys. That being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. First up, Mouse PI for Hire. Meet the Cash trailer drops. So we're going to play the trailer for you and just go over some of the summary here. So today, Fumi Games and Playside Studios have released a new trailer for their upcoming black and white first-person shooter, Mouse PI for Hire. Mouseburg has an eclectic cast of characters, and we would like you to meet some of them. Learn more about the main characters in Mouse PI for Hire as told by the talent who brought them to life. So Troy Baker is Jack Pepper. Florian Clare is Wanda Fuller. Cameron Grimes is Tammy Tumbler. Fred Tatsascori is John Brown, and Frank Todaro is Cornelius Stilton. The monochromatic visual style of a hand-drawn rubber hose animation and retro jazz soundtrack of Mouse PI for Hire are created with the same techniques of the era. As a private investigator, Jack Pepper, you will discover that a corrupt city full of crooks and danger is just a taste of things to come. Explore the noir-inspired city teeming with heavily armed gangs, mobs, and characters from the dark side to uncover secrets within Mouseburg. Meet private investigator Jack Pepper, once a war hero, now a detective in a world where danger lurks in the smallest mouse hole. His journey starts with a seemingly cliche damsel in distress, but as P.I. Pepper begins to scratch the surface of Mouseburg's seedy underbelly, his journey for justice quickly spirals into a complex web of intrigue involving murder, corruption, and the unlikeliest of enemies. Discover and combine powerful upgrades with comical weapons to knock down, slash, stomp, and blow apart enemies in creative and violent ways as Pepper ventures through non-linear maps, trying to thwart the takeover by corrupt politicians. Enhance the melee combat with a can of Spike D spinach. Popeye the Sailor Man, anyone? Anyways, extend aerial traversal with a helicopter, or even attach your mouse tail to a grappling hook to rapidly ascend across platforms and more. From crackling Tommy guns to explosive firepower, each tool in Pepper's arsenal is designed to bring out the noir grit and cartoon chaos using an array of classic yet creatively twisted weaponry in epic fights and boss battles with comical demises, encounter a mischievous and disturbed cast of big bads as Pepper takes the gritty journey to the dark side of town. Playful weaponry and a distinctive health display, coupled with enemies behaving like cartoon characters, add a lighthearted twist to traditional FPS gameplay. Explore a diverse city playground from the dark city streets of Mouseburg to a noir film studio and casinos to the Marina Port and Dock District, vast underground sewers and swamp marshlands. Beware what lurks beneath the surface. Loot collectibles and clues, play minigames, and fight through the city's towns, alleyways, and more. Now, Mouse PI does come out next week, and it's just one of those games that just look really interesting ever since we saw it last year. This is one of Eric Moore, one of the co-hosts of the Nintendo podcast, one of his most anticipated indie games. This is definitely on my radar. I'm going to be paying close attention to reviews next week. I really hope this is a rock solid game because it is definitely something I am highly interested in playing. Who knows? Maybe even our co-host of the show, Thunderstash Gaming, maybe ends up having a full review of this game coming. We'll have to wait and see. Now, a game we also know is coming, well, later this month. Actually, I think next week is Pragmata. That's right, Capcom delivering the goods on Switch 2. It got a new Japanese commercial. Check it out. And look, it's a sci-fi action adventure with its own unique hacking twist. It's officially coming to Switch 2 on April 17, 2026. Ahead of the game's launch, Capcom has shared another commercial, which you're watching now. Pre-orders for Pragmata are live on Switch 2. As an exclusive bonus, players who pre-order will receive Hugh's samurai-style Neo Bushido outfit and Deanna's ninja-inspired Neo Kanachi costume. Alongside the standard version, which is $60, a deluxe edition at $70 will be available, which includes the Shelter Variety Pack. This bundle offers an assortment of alternate cosmetic outfits for Hugh and Deanna, a weapon skid, emotes for Deanna, extra background music for the Shelter, and an in-game library with 75 pieces of digital work. In the near future, humans have developed a Luna filament, a material that can be used to create almost anything, so long as its users have the right data. When communication is lost with a lunar station dedicated to the research and development of this material, a response team is dispatched. However, a massive lunar quake hits soon after their arrival. Hugh Williams, separated from his team, unconscious and badly injured, is discovered by Deanna, a mysterious being in the form of a young girl. She is a Pragmata, a unique android created using Luna filament. Hugh and Deanna must combine abilities to overcome the many threats they encounter on the lunar facility. In combat, Deanna hacks enemy systems to expose their weaknesses, allowing Hugh to take aim with diverse arsenal of firearms. This fusion of hacking and shooting delivers immersive, fast-paced, strategic gameplay where every decision shapes the battle. Teamwork is equally important in exploring the lunar research station as it is in combat. When moving around the lunar station, use the thrusters in Hugh's suit to zip through the facility, while Deanna can hack into a security system, unlocking doors and clearing paths for progression. Stay alert at all times, because while the facility can sometimes feel eerily deserted, cold, and lifeless, enemy bots are always lying in wait. And just as a reminder, there's actually a playable demo for this right now on Switch 2 and other platforms as well, so you can go ahead and just try the game out for yourself. That's really the best way to get a taste of this. Obviously, we'll wait for reviews and everything as well. Marketing is going to ramp up. We're going to see more and more of these commercials. I don't know if I'm going to cover all of them, especially going into the details I just did about the game that basically was a press release. But hey, I'm really excited for Pragmata, and I think a lot of you guys are as well. And that's when we get into this really interesting story that, I'm going to be honest, we don't cover a lot of retro stories like this, game preservation stories like this, unless there's like a big hullabaloo going on with like a big giant video game museum or something. But the first video game I've ever played in my entire life was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! It is the first thing my hands touched that controller on the NES. That was the game inserted. In fact, I was fighting Mike Tyson. My dad was at Mike Tyson. He had never beat the game. He paused and went to the bathroom. I unpaused and immediately lost to Mike Tyson. And if you understand what gaming was like back then, it means you have to start it all over again. Not the Mike Tyson fight, all the way back to the beginning with Glass Joe. My dad was not happy with me, let me tell you. But that was my very first experience even playing video games. Obviously, I'd watched my dad play, but I was really young at the time. So the reason I'm bringing up this story is this is why we're covering this, because a pre-Mike Tyson prototype version, so a version of the game that did not have Mike Tyson, actually recently sold at auction and has been dumped online. So it sold for $45,000. And there were some doubts whether this is a real prototype or a fan mock-up, but all the professionals have dug into it to realize, hey, this actually is a legit prototype despite some of the weirdness compared to other NES prototypes. So Nintendo is about to be incredibly unhappy. I don't know about that part, but this is according to Go Nintendo. As a prototype version of Punch-Out, prior to Mike Tyson being added, has not only sold at auction for $45,000, it's also been dumped online by the new owner. While there was some speculation as to whether this prototype was legit at first, it has since been confirmed as the real deal, giving Nintendo fans a treasure trove of insight into what would eventually become Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. This prototype version obviously doesn't have Tyson on it, but it does include some other notable differences from the final copy. Some of the discoveries that we've seen so far include the opening credits roll includes characters named Rocky Head and Mongol Khan. These are not in the final game. Soda Popinski had his Vodka Drunkensky name from the arcade version of Punch-Out. I think you can understand why they maybe censored that a bit. They should have left the original name, but this is a well-known thing. Debug allows players to control unfinished opponents and cycle through their movesets. As the prototype has been dumped, you can dive even deeper into the differences. And look, we'll provide a link to the cutting room floor and obviously Go Nintendo where we got this stuff from. I'm just really, to me, it's really exciting when we see stuff like this happen. This one obviously a little bit more personal for me because my first ever video game was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. But I know this has happened for many other games. Prototypes have come out, games that you guys care about. This is one that hits home for me. You know what also hits home for some people? Well, Elden Ring. It's been one of the most anticipated games for the Nintendo Switch 2, despite the fact that it's like a 4 or 5 year old game at this point. But it is releasing with the DLC complete with Tarnished Edition, and thanks to retailer listings, we got a price point and discovered that it's a game key card, although I would say a lot of us were kind of just expecting it to be a game key card. One reason is the DLC itself has literally never been available in a physical format on any platform. I guess you could probably get it on PC and like burn it to a disc or something. You know what I mean? In an official capacity. And, you know, some people have maybe hoped, hey, maybe they found a way to put this all in cart the way Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is coming later this year and is the only actual physical version of the game. Well, that's not the case here. It is a game key card and they are charging $80. Look, we did a whole video on this yesterday and it's caused quite a stir online. So I'm not going to dive too deep here. I just wanted to tell people in case they missed yesterday's video because, you know, it was kind of a non-standard video. This is our news coverage of it. Look, guys, I don't really care that it's $80. It's the exact same price as the Erdtree Edition, which is the main game and the DLC on every other platform in existence. The $80 price to me is kind of just expected because that's literally what it costs everywhere else. I will say that Bandai Namco, you know, it would behoove them. And I think one thing they can learn from this getting out there is that, hey, it's fine to have the Tarnished Edition, but there's a lot of people that would prefer if the Elden Ring was released individually. So you had Elden Ring on its own and the DLC on its own, and you could purchase those individually, not just the combo pack. The thing is, folks, when you ask for that, and I don't think that's anything wrong, Elden Ring is still MSRP $59.99 on other platforms. It does regularly go on sale. I think it was recently on sale on PlayStation, but its normal price is $59.99, and the DLC's never been on sale. That's $40. That is more expensive than combining them together. But then again, you know, if you end up not liking Elden Ring, well, you could save $20 if you only just got the normal version. Or at least you could. That is, if they ever bothered to give us, you know, individual versions of this, the DLC on its own and the game on its own, which is currently not announced. So $80 game key card. Look, at this point, there's no need to keep talking about game key cards. You either like them or you don't care. Those are the three options. Personally, I'm not a fan of them, and I also don't really care. Like, I've given impassioned speeches about being like hating key cards and hating what they represent. But in the end, I've known the all digital future is a thing. I've been all digital on PC for 20 years. It would be hypocritical of me to suddenly now be like up in arms and raising pitchforks and screaming at Nintendo and all these third party companies for key cards when it's like, oh, look, guys, I mean, I can't resell my PC digital games. So at least this, I guess, I'm going to be honest, I kind of wouldn't mind if there were like key card versions of PC games. I might be alone in saying that, but I don't know. It's a weird situation because I obviously would rather it just be full physical, but in the end, none of this is ever going to stop me from actually playing games. Now, we're going to turn heads here over to the Legend of Zelda movie. We're going to get away from games, give you a break from the gaming news, because the Legend of Zelda movie was recently in the news, not just because there was an update to IMDb, which is not technically a like verified thing, right? Anyone can edit those pages, but it seems pretty safe when we learn about the composer and stuff like that, because that composer has worked with Westwall on many projects. But we're actually talking about Takaya Imamura. He is a former Nintendo employee, since retired, who's worked on a bunch of games dealing with art and stuff like that. And he made comments not too long ago, basically saying that he was concerned that their magic would be lost when Link talks in the Zelda movie. Now, I talked in the past how I thought this was a little much to say that the magic will be lost, considering Link has already talked extensively in the cartoon series. Link isn't technically a mute and does talk in the games, but we don't audibly hear the voice very often because it's meant to be a player avatar. We're meant to talk for him. And also he talks all the time in the manga. So it's one of those things that I don't really feel like I agree with the idea the magic would be lost if Link talks a lot, but he decided to give further comments. And before I read those comments, I just want to say one thing. Happy birthday, man. I discovered today that Takaya Imamura has his birthday today. That is if his birthday is up to date on X. So happy birthday, man. No ill will here. You're free to have your opinions. And hey, thank you for the work you've done on Nintendo games in the past, including The Legend of Zelda. All right, let's get into how he followed some of this up. So he says, how do you think they will tackle Link speaking? I trust Nintendo to come up with the perfect balance. They wouldn't ruin their IP. Also in Breath of the Wild, it says he can talk. He just chooses to stay silent as like a show of loyalty and strength or something. And Amura says, in the movie, they'll obviously talk, but it seems like it'll be a taciturn character. What he is saying, and he said this in another comment we're going to read, he's meaning that a taciturn character is basically someone who barely talks, has a really shy personality. So they have a voice, but they barely speak. I don't actually think that's how Link's going to be portrayed here. Portraying Link as a kind of a shy person doesn't really fit in with the courage. Like, he's supposed to be courageous, so he shouldn't really be shy. In fact, you could argue he should be kind of confident. Shyness can maybe be there to start, but throughout the movie, he should be gaining confidence and probably talking more. But that's my take. Not done, though, because obviously, you know, Imura's not immune to seeing how the internet reacted to his quotes and people even misquoting him and saying falsehoods on what he said. So he decided to actually quote one of these and give further conversation. So it's not that I don't want you to talk at all, which is kind of what it sounded like he said. Rather, I hope you can keep that Link-like taciturnity instead of chattering on too much. Somehow the conversation's getting a bit grand. So he thinks his comments are being blown out of proportion. He's just talking about what he personally would like to see. It doesn't mean the movie's going to flop. It doesn't mean that fan base will reject it. He's just talking about his personal wants and desires. He has no real say, but, you know, he's just talking about his own desires. And look, we all have our own desires for various aspects of the Zelda movie. All right, now we're going to take a turn back to games, although not game trailers and stuff like that. We're first going to dive into the Famitsu sale data for last week. Now, like we've been doing lately, we're going to go over to Universal Nintendo here because I just like their presentation format. And you'll see here that Pokemon Pokopia remains at number 1 for last week at 45,484. And you can see second place is Mario Kart World at 8,000. Let's just say that's a pretty big damn gap. So physically, Pokemon Pokopia is creeping in on 1 million sales. We already know it's over 1 million with digital. Is it over 2 million now with digital? We don't obviously have that data. Nintendo will be updating us on May 8th, by the way, because, well, they might not update us for this month. But yeah, the year end, the fiscal year end meeting for Nintendo's on May 8th. Anyways, Minecraft for Switch is at number 3. You're seeing Mega Man Star Force Perfect Collection at number 4. Animal Crossing New Horizons at 5. Monster Hunter Stories 3. Twin Dragons of Destiny at 6. Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 Edition. Everybody's Ring Ring Park. It's the Bella Bella Park DLC. That's a 7. Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green download cards. That's like a card you buy at the store. That's at number 8. Crimson Desert for PlayStation 5 is at number 9. And then Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 Edition is at number 10. So one PlayStation product popping up in there. It's not really their product, it's Pearl Abyss, but one game for PlayStation 5 on the list, and then everything else is Nintendo for the top 10. For the hardware, look, no surprise, there's a pretty decent hold week over week with Switch 2 and Palcopia continuing to sell. 59,543. That is a 6,000 console drop from last week, but hey, the bigger news here is that it has officially crossed 5 million sales. In fact, doing some digging here, Switch 2 is the fastest selling system in Japan history. It's like 350,000 or so units ahead of the Game Boy Advance, which was the previous fastest selling at this point in the console's life. So really cool. And also shout out to the GBA. The Game Boy Advance, even in the US, was the fastest selling system, or is currently the fastest selling system ever. Switch 2 was past it at launch, and as of today, Game Boy Advance is the fastest selling, with Switch 2 being the second fastest. But big shout out to GBA. It's really curious how fast, and just explosive the sales were for Game Boy Advance. And if you go back and look at the data, it was explosive every single year until the DS came out. Guys, they sold 80 million in like 4 years. That's 20 million a year. Like, Game Boy Advance was flying off shelves, and yet Nintendo still launched the DS. Now, at the time, the DS wasn't supposed to replace the Game Boy Advance, but then the DS blew up. So take that for what it is. I just find that really interesting. That Game Boy Advance, man, that takes me back. Anyways, Nintendo Switch OLED there at number 3, PlayStation 5 digital version at number 2, and then you're seeing Switch Lite at 4, Nintendo Switch at 5, PlayStation 5 Pro actually has a really big drop off, and there's an explanation for this. So at 4,662 units last week to 840 this week, well, the PlayStation 5 Pro went up in price in Japan. That's right. These price increases aren't just affecting us here in the US. There's been universal price increases for PlayStation 5 all over the world, including the PlayStation 5 Pro in Japan, and even the PlayStation 5 in Japan. The only thing to not see a price increase was that digital version that they have at pretty much the same price as Switch 2. That's why you see that one at number 2. But the rest of the PS5 lineup saw a price hike, and the sales crashed. So take that for what you will. Hopefully Sony was expecting that. Anyways, Xbox Series X there at number 8. I mean, dude, it's crazy to see PlayStation 5 barely outsell the Xbox Series X just head-to-head with the base PS5 and the base Series X. That's just wild to me. And you're seeing a bump in sales for the Series X as well, from 26 units to 525. Now, Series X did not see a price increase in Japan last week, so maybe Series X is even cheaper than the PS5 there. I'd have to double check on that, so don't quote me. I didn't bother to research that because it's not really relevant to talking Nintendo, but yeah, maybe someone down in the comments can let me know if you bothered to look it up. And it was a Series Digital Edition is at number 9, and then Series S at number 10. And then you can see the hardware rankings. It's pretty obvious what's in the lead here. All right, so that's really cool stuff. I like going over these Famitsu sales every week. We go over those ones and sometimes some of the charts from other territories, but we don't really get numbers. And we usually go over the Circana data, which I believe we should be getting next week for the month of March. So I'm very curious how Palcopia and Switch 2 performed in the US. We'll have a greater idea of that here in about a week. All right. Next up, we got to talk about Pokemon Champions. Look, this is a huge launch. It's a Switch 1 game that plays on Switch 2, but there was like a dock issue and some other things, graphic problems, people mad about the state of the game, and I'm not a Pokemon expert, so I'm not even the best person to talk about this because I don't care about competitive Pokemon. I don't want to say I don't care about Pokemon, just competitive Pokemon is not something I'm really into, and this app is supposedly supposed to be for competitive Pokemon, yet maybe some people are acting like it's stripped out a bunch of competitive stuff, so it's for casuals. Some competitive players are like, nah, screw that. They're just making changes because this is a long-term application. It's got to apply across multiple generations of Pokemon. Look, I am not an expert, but what I will say is we have some news that the Pokemon Champions developer does apologize for some of these issues and say fixes are on the way. So we got to go over this. Pokemon Champions has not launched in the way that Pokemon Company would have hoped, as numerous issues have been found with the game, and it's clear case of the game needing more time in the oven before launching. Thankfully, the development team are aware of the issues and have apologized and said that fixes are on the way. It should be noted that they've only listed a small number of bugs, with the full number currently unknown. Here's what they said. Thank you for enjoying Pokemon Champions, reads a note from the game's developer, posted online today. We have confirmed that the following issues are currently ongoing. The description of the leech seed state is incorrect. It takes damage equal to 1/16 of maximum HP. The correct way is to take damage equal to 1/8 of maximum HP. However, the calculation is actually correct in the battle, despite what it says on screen. Under certain conditions, when both Pokemon Mega Evolve simultaneously, the order might be actually unintended. The gender of some Pokemon in the tutorial is incorrect. The gender of some Pokemon in the released coordinated teams is incorrect. When in Encore state, the ability Lightning Rod may not activate correctly. When viewing move details during battle, if you hover the cursor over the Mega Evolution and press the B button, you cannot select the move. If this phenomenon occurs, you can avoid the inability to select the move by opening and closing the surrender window with the minus button. So obviously a temporary fix to a pretty significant bug there when you're in the middle of a fight. Anyways, the above bugs are scheduled to be fixed in a future data update or maintenance. The note continues, we will continue to investigate other issues not mentioned above. We sincerely apologize for any inconveniences this may have caused. Thank you for your continued support of Pokemon Champions. And a lot of the complaints I'm seeing online aren't really about any of this stuff. This is kind of minor compared to some of the much larger complaints about the game, but some of the larger complaints, if they're going to address any of them, are going to take much more time to solve than like simple bugs like this that there's workarounds and it doesn't technically hurt gameplay. It just makes things a little wonky and a little unpolished. But look, I'm not going to sit here and get like all up in arms about it. I don't really care that much about this game, but I do hope they continue to make improvements to it. And who knows, if it ever hits a really good state and I end up loving like Pokemon Wind and Waves and I feel like doing some competitive stuff, maybe I try out Champions someday, but right now it's not even on my radar. Next up, we actually have an update for the NSO. That's right, some games being added. So NES Nintendo Classics received the game Pac-Man, Mendel Palace, and the Tower of Druaga, or whatever, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce that. I never played this game. So I'll show a little trailer here. In Pac-Man, you obviously control the iconic Pac-Man, everyone's favorite character. In Mendel's Palace, you flip the panels to defeat enemies and rescue candy. In Tower of Druaga, I can't pronounce that damn thing. You control Gil, the hero, as he climbs the tower. So yeah, this is all part of the NES Classics and all of that. And yeah, look, the games look good. I don't really know what else to say. Pac-Man to me is obviously the biggest one being added here. But in the end, guys, I just like that Nintendo continues to update it. After all, this is a paid service. Like NSO is something we pay monthly and or yearly for, depending on who you are. And it's just good to see updates. You know what's also good to see updates? Well, how about a bunch of updates for level 5 games? So this section is just going to be all combined together, a giant level 5 presentation section, because after all, that's what they did today. They had a presentation. So let's start to break down each individual thing. And we're going to start with level 5's Snack World. It's an RPG and it's getting a full-blown remake on Switch 2. That's right. Check out the trailer here. We'll be honest. This is according to Nintendo Life. The 2017 RPG Snack World: The Dungeon Crawl was not on our Switch 2 remake bingo card, but surprise, that's exactly what's happening. As revealed in today's Level 5 showcase, Snack World Reloaded is in the works for Switch 2, boasting a complete overhaul of the original game with new visuals, mechanics, and a fresh storyline from the perspective of the anime's protagonist, Chup. Details are pretty light on the ground at the moment, but Level 5's Akihiro Hino confirmed the development of the project is going well. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long before we get to see what this one's all about, though, knowing Level 5, hello, Professor Layton, which we have news on in a moment, it'll be years down the line. The whole thing has a pretty strong Fantasy Life eye air to it, which we can't blame the studio for falling back on after that game's success last year. So, look, I never played the original. I do have to admit the footage does look kind of interesting here in this remake. So who knows? Maybe this is something we'll check out whenever the hell it comes out. Now, you heard me mention Professor Layton because this is maybe one of the most anticipated games in this whole event for Nintendo fans. We've known about it for years. This is where people get like, oh, this game, we're hearing about it now. Yeah, it's going to probably be years from now. Professor Layton's one of the reasons why people think that. And yes, we got a brand new trailer. Now, this game is still slated for 2026. And again, we're going to read Nintendo Life here. It says, today's Level 5 showcase might not have been overflowing with release dates, but it did give us a look at Professor Layton and the New World of Steam with the confirmation that it's still coming this year. No release date, though. Ah, man. Really frustrating, but at least it is coming this year. The new trailer is our best look yet at the upcoming puzzler, diving deep into Layton and Luke's adventures in Steam Bison and introducing a bunch of side characters we'll meet along the way. Keep an eye out for Don Paulo cameo. Things stay pretty cutscene focused for the most part, but there's a nice little bit of gameplay slotted in the middle, showcasing even more of those all-important puzzles. We also get a reminder of the game's main Japanese voice cast, which we already knew about, Yo Oizumi and Mio Amada, let's not forget, and the confirmation that the theme song is being penned by none other than the composing legend, Joe Hisashi, renowned for his work at Studio Ghibli, with titles like Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, and Spirited Away. While Level 5 President Akira Hiro wasn't able to provide a firm release date, he confirmed the game is nearing completion and announced no change to the current release window, which again is this year. I assume this summer, maybe even at Summer Game Fest, at one of those various events there, we might get a release date then, but nearing completion means it's on track to go gold here in the upcoming months. But we have more to talk about than Professor Layton. How about a Holy Horror Mansion trailer? I didn't even know what the hell this game was until today. Check it out. We're over at Universal Nintendo reading their breakdown here. And it says Level 5 today released a new promotional trailer for Holy Horror Mansion. It's an upcoming ghost crafting RPG game currently in development. Now, no platform or release window has been confirmed yet, but I mean, this is Level 5 coming to Nintendo and pretty much everyone else seems like a no-brainer, but we have a small bit of a summary. They don't provide a lot. This is a brand new game, after all, new IP even. It says a gripping horror story about a mysterious family. The young hero, who lives in a mansion on top of his grandmother's apartment building, finds a camera in a locked room, encounters a ghost, and gets involved in all sorts of trouble. And that's it. That's all the information they have given outside of the trailer. So I think it looks pretty cool. I mean, look, Level 5 has a certain look to their games, and I happen to think they're pretty cool. Now, those aren't the only games, though, that some people cared about. Obviously, Professor Layton might be the biggest, but also today they showed off Inazuma 11 and Deca Police, or at least gave us some news on it. So we're going to head over to Universal Nintendo here, where it says Inazuma 11 RE adds a version for the Switch 2. Deca Police has a version for the Switch 2, but cancels the Switch 1 version, which is a little unfortunate. So Level 5 today released 2 short videos with updates on the development status of Inazuma 11 RE and Deca Police games. The clip dedicated to Inazuma 11 RE revealed the development progress on the game remains on schedule, with its release targeting versions for Switch 2, Switch, PlayStation 5, and PC. The previously announced PlayStation 4 version has been discontinued. Deca Police, the official website dedicated to the game, has revealed that the Switch version and the PlayStation 4 versions have been discontinued, and that the release will now be for the Switch 2, in addition to versions for both PS5 and PC. Both games are still planned to come out this year. So, yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know a lot about these games. They're not really the kind of games that I'm into, but I just needed to make sure we got through everything in that presentation before we move on to this next thing that I got off the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit. I did look this up a bit. I'm having hard times getting the website to load properly, so we're going to do a screenshot. But do you guys remember the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy game? I believe it was made by Ubisoft, and it was part of that famous E3, I think, back in the day, where it was like walking simulators, and it was like one of the walking simulators. It was really weird. Anyways, the point is that that game does already exist on Nintendo platforms. There is actually a cloud version available right now on Switch 1, and because it's on Switch 1, technically you can play it on Switch 2. What if I were to tell you that it sounds like, based on a rating at a Taiwanese rating board, that the game is going to be coming natively to Nintendo Switch 2? It's actually kind of a good game based on people who played it. So this is obviously over on Imager, where there's a screenshot here. So it's not listed publicly yet, but hey, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy by Koch Media, Switch 2, violence, inappropriate language, action, not listed yet, Upward Battlefield, Crafted Inc., Switch 2, blah, 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 blah. This is just a listing for it. So in the end, we obviously don't know when or if it's going to be coming out, but this obviously suggests it will be. The game is much better, I think, than people thought it was going to be heading in. And now that we're years removed from some of the criticism of it, people seem to actually enjoy it. So take that for what it is. One of our last stories here is about Rhythm Heaven. I say one of our last because there's some additional conversational context with this one. But Nintendo yesterday dropped this on Nintendo Today, and look, I can't show you Nintendo Today on a PC. It doesn't really work that way. But it at least indicates, hey, scan this QR code and check out what's new with Rhythm Heaven. Well, what is new with Rhythm Heaven? Well, look, they show off some gameplay, a very, very small snippet of like a former mini game coming back with a slightly new art direction. I shouldn't say slightly, a completely new art direction. I don't know the video is really that noteworthy, although it's performing very well on social media, especially in Japan. But the big news to come out of it is this. From Wario64, Rhythm Heaven Groove releases on July 2nd. Now, this is a Nintendo Switch game. They confirm it will work on Switch too. Now, here's the thing. This is an interesting prospect because Rhythm Heaven coming out in July was stated by Nate the Hate on that podcast when he laid out Nintendo's plans for the rest of this year and then 3D Mario for 2027. Now, Nate the Hate said these are not Nintendo's entire slate, and this is not the entire plan, but this is just what he's aware of or willing to share at this time. And one of them was Rhythm Heaven coming in July. So this is just like a check mark on, like the very first check mark, really, on Nate the Hate's list of what Nintendo's doing the rest of this year. And we know one of the things is supposed to be a Star Fox reveal this month. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going on with the Star Fox stuff. If that does get revealed this month, then you throw the Rhythm Heaven in. That's now 2 things on the list ticked off, making Ocarina of Time remake and Mario being next year seeming more and more likely the more this stuff gets ticked off as we get closer to the summer. So again, though, the next thing up for Nate the Hate is Star Fox reveal this month. You might go, well, why did they do the Rhythm Heaven date before revealing Star Fox? Because if Star Fox is supposed to come in June, why the hell are we talking about Rhythm Heaven now? I have a theory, and I think this theory is going to prove to be true. So Rhythm Heaven at the moment is the final Nintendo published game announced for the original Nintendo Switch. We have Tamagotchi Life coming here, and then Rhythm Heaven. Both of those are Switch 1 properties published by Nintendo. There is nothing else announced right now coming from Nintendo for Switch 1. So I have a feeling the next Direct, which is probably in June, that general Direct will be a Switch 2 only Direct. And if I am right about that, that would make sense where they would talk about Rhythm Heaven now because they need to get this out of the way and let people know when it's coming so then they can go right back to focusing on Switch 2 because obviously when Star Fox is revealed, there's going to be a lot of marketing ramp up for that. And then we're going to be kind of turning the tables here. You know, it's going to have Yoshi coming for Switch 2 as well. Got to market that and turning the tables to that Direct. So I think it's just, let's get the Switch 1 news out of the way now before we start blasting Switch 2 news the rest of the year. That's just a theory. I don't have any evidence for it because nothing else has happened yet to prove it true. But let's revisit this theory this summer and see how Nintendo's handling marketing and their very first Direct of the year, general-wise, and stuff like that. There's some light rumors floating out there, by the way, about a potential partner showcase at some point this month as well from Attack the Backlog, but we don't know anything on that officially yet, and Attack the Backlog's not even 100% committed to that. Also, State of Play is supposedly happening next week. Multiple people, Attack the Backlog and Nate the Hate, putting it out there, I think on the 16th. There's a lot of other people that have corroborated this State of Play next week. Supposedly, we know about some games that are going to be in it, including Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. Again, we're going to probably be live reacting to that next week, so we can talk much more about it when that show actually happens, or if it happens, since it's not confirmed yet. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Rovajans from Nintendo Prime. We had another beefy video today. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And what a great way to end our Monday through Friday week and kicking off the weekend here with a beefy news video dropping right into your laps. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next video.